Man, I can't believe it. It's been 3 long years and finally it happened. The XFL Championship is in the books. It's amazing to even say out loud, quite honestly, after the way 2020 ended and the fact that it's actually been 23 years since the XFL has been able to play a championship game. So, um, how you guys doing tonight? How is everybody feeling after the XFL Championship game? I know a couple of us are betters. We'll get into that here shortly. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, what's up? I'm Chris. I've been gone for a couple weeks, but I'm back. Just like Vince Young, I'm ready to go.
Just don't call this the dream team, please. Uh, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Twitter handle at DFS_Marlin. You can find all of my content over at fantasyguru.com. Writing all XFL, USFL, all football content. So go check us out over there for that or any other sport as well.
Absolutely. And then Michael Washington, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I guess this is probably where I should plug my Twitter since I'm terrible at social media and I'm trying to do a lot better at it. Twitter handle is at MW77. It's spelled out. I'm trying to do better with it. I'm awful with it, but yeah, I don't have any real specific titles, I guess, other than just being the resident jaw jacker, I guess, or jaw talker or whatever. That's all I ever do. It's basically talk.
That's what we're all here for. And then you can't see him, but he is here vocally. Christian Pierce of Pierce Sports Productions. You might have caught his Cavante Turpin video a couple months back that was freaking amazing, and many other videos since then. If you haven't, go check out his stuff. Christian, how are you doing today?
You guys can hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, yeah, I'm pretty good. It's a nice day out on the beach, and it's been good weather.
Very nice. Where are you at right now?
I live out in San Diego, so it's got the nice marine layer going on.
There you go.
San Diego, MLS, possible expansion for spring football.
Yep.
Bring it.
Yep, 100%.
Hey, I'm just going to throw it out. The San Diego Fleet was my team with the AAF, so I feel kind of upset that they aren't represented anywhere.
Yeah.
I hope Andy Paul Murray catches this segment right now because he's a huge San Diego guy. Every time he gets an opportunity, he's writing about it. In fact, he's got an article that's out there talking about the different venues in San Diego to put a team back. And he even campaigned for the Vipers to be moved mid-season to San Diego. But yeah, anyway, we're getting way off course here. But anyway, the XFL Championship is in the books. And as we all know, the team that nobody, and I mean literally nobody, expected to win, not only won, but they won in dominant fashion. So we're going to go to our resident DC Defenders fan. Michael, I'm sure you've got some things to say about this game.
Honestly, for as frustrated as I was, I have nothing but respect for Arlington and what they did. I mean, they had a game plan, they executed it. They slowed DC down across the board, and the defense just couldn't get off the field. I mean, you scored on 6 of 7 possessions. They actually technically had 8, but the last one I don't count because it was just the kneel downs. But you score on 6 out of 7 possessions. I mean, you're doing something right, and your game plan is being executed flawlessly at that point. Because I don't know if you remember, but the very first play, Luis Perez got rocked and threw up this kind of like weird chicken duck ball that just happened to get caught. And I don't know what a chicken duck is, but it's a new term. We're going to run with it. But he caught it, and one of his receivers caught it, and the next thing you know, it was a first down on the second play, and it just felt like DC just never got pressure on him again. And whenever they did, the ball just kind of, the brakes just went Arlington's way. I mean, DC had a chance at the end of the game. Chris Blair dropped that wide open. If he catches that, he's gone. It was in stride, perfect pass, and that would have turned around and given them within a touchdown at that point. And maybe it would have rejuvenated the defense, but instead we ended up punting. It was just those were the breaks that DC had all year that they just didn't execute against Arlington, and I don't know if it was Greg Williams' game plan or if Arlington was just well more prepared and made adjustments compared to the game that they played in week 7, week 8, and DC didn't, and that's just ultimately what you have to do. You have to be able to change your game plan, and Arlington just looked more prepared, and hats off to them. It sucks. I mean, the DC, team, the players took it really hard. They've been really hard on themselves on Twitter. David Bellamy specifically was pretty harsh on himself after that loss. So don't tell me that these players don't take these XFL championships seriously, because they absolutely do in this spring ball for sure. Because
absolutely
they were pretty upset, especially David Bellamy.
Well, let me preface what I'm about to say by saying I am not saying these guys are all money motivated, but there's a fairly large win bonus in the XFL for the championship game. So I'm sure they wanted to win that game. There's a reason why those win bonuses are good for leagues like this. Let's go to Krish to make sure he's awake. Krish, what were your thoughts on the XFL championship game?
Man, I just want to start off by saying what a great season of XFL football. They came back. They came in hot. They destroyed the USFL. And it's been a great year. I want to congratulate Arlington on the win. Specifically my boy TJ Barnes down there. D Lyman, made a couple great tackles. Congratulations on a great career. And I want to also congratulate one of my other boys who didn't play for Arlington but were on the reserve list because he took another job in town. But, still, the championship counts for him because he would have been on the team. So I count that. But, I mean, what a game. What a game. I mean, the broadcast, the production, everything. I mean, ESPN, they knocked it out of the park. I felt like I was watching a legit national championship game. And I have so much respect for that. Like, the energy they built around it, they built it up very well. 20,000 fans in the Alamo Dome. It looked great. No, I mean, I think DC, unfortunately, ran out of steam, They didn't come to play. Obviously, they played dirty all year. That's how they play. And they got beat at their own game. I mean, they lead the league in unsportsmanlike conduct penalties and active play penalties, according to my stats. But, yeah, but, I mean, Tahamu, he looked a little shaky. Defense locked down on him. Obviously, DC defense has been dominant all year, and I thought that was going to continue. But Tyler Robb, man, I mean, I said it from day one, he's a special kid. So, excited for him. Abram Smith, he played a nice game. But I think that DC eventually just ran out of steam. And Arlington, man, that team fought all the way, Even though St. Louis should have been in the championship game if they would have made the playoffs, that whole thing. But still, I mean, conference, the XFL doing their conference thing makes it special, I mean, we look at another league, man. A 2 and 3 team is about to be in the playoffs in your league, your Philadelphia Stars. But we'll get to that later.
We got a lot more games to go, so no, they're not going to be 2 and 3 in the playoffs. But yeah, we'll talk about that later. Christian, why don't we go to you next? What were your thoughts on this XFL championship game?
One thing I will say that kind of rubbed me the wrong way was, unfortunately, it wasn't as good as the USFL championship game from last year. Maybe I'm a little biased because I am a Stallions fan, but that game was basically entertaining through and through. It wasn't the Stallions were gonna run with the ball, they're just gonna win the game, they're never gonna get a shot. The Stars had a chance, they always did, and it was a close game. This one, by halftime, even though with the 3-point conversion rule, they still were close. I kind of already knew they weren't going to catch up. So, I was watching That's Good Sports stream while watching the game, but luckily he kept it entertaining for me. But I was kind of a little bored about it in the second half because I kind of just knew that they were going to kind of walk with it. And I'm mainly excited about it because my boy Luis Perez, which spring football started with me in the AAF in 2019, and he was one of the few guys that came out of that league, with great stride. And then he has played in every single league from that point: USFL, the Spring League, The only one he hasn't played is like any arena football because I guess it's too good for that. So it's just cool seeing a lot of the boys, and a lot of the Renegades guys were like from the AAF too, like TJ Barnes and Davion Smith, like a lot of guys that were in that league that won, which was a bit different from the Stallions when it was a lot of NFL dudes like Magoo, who just like got dropped off a roster, or Victor Bolden, who got dropped off a roster. There's a lot of relatively like fresh names that weren't around in 2019 because they were actually on the NFL rosters. So I thought this was a cooler win for the spring football like community than like just the overall football community.
That's an interesting take. Mark, what was your thoughts on this XFL Championship game?
Well, I mean, I've been saying it, like Arlington, they've just been playing great football, sound football for the last several weeks now, and it all changed obviously when Luis Perez was traded to Arlington, and that kind of forced a deal, I would say. But at the end of the day, I thought the difference in this game was the fact that Michael Joseph wasn't on the field, and like it was weird. I thought it was crazy how everyone was active, including him. He was active, but he just, they decided to hold him out because of injury. So that injury was one to watch. And the fact that he didn't play in this game, I thought was the difference maker, because they went right after Tyler Vaughn's. They exposed the exterior, and then they opened up the field for Sal Canella, and it was no turning back. At the end of the day, Tyler Vaughn's had an 8 for 83 game and a touchdown. So, you look at it overall, and Luis Perez went off. He had a great game. DC has been the worst pass defense. We've been saying it all season long at this point, and they proved, time and time again throughout the season that they were the worst pass defense in the league, and we saw it on full display in this game. So, I think the optics, I'd like to address the fact that the elephant in the room, right? The optics were, people that don't follow the league, how could a losing team, a team that was under 500, go and win the championship? But look, at the end of the day, Arlington had a great team going into this season. The only thing they were missing was a quarterback. They made a move for a quarterback and a guy who figured out an offense on the fly. They got into the postseason by rule and ended up showing everyone that they deserve to be there as well. So hats off to them for making it and pulling all the way through.
I'm glad you mentioned Michael Joseph, because I mentioned in the chat with Sam and everybody that I feel like that game would have been a little different. Like, yeah, Michael Joseph has definitely been, kind of some at points a liability, but he reminds me so much of Channing Stribling. And when I was watching the Stars game this past weekend, that it just was like seeing what Channing was doing when he was on was what we were missing completely through the entire game against Arlington. And I knew that there was a chance he wouldn't play. I think they wanted him active just to test it out, and to try to see if he could give it a go. And I don't think warm-ups went the way that they wanted it to. So
I don't even think it was warm-ups. The way that they kind of reported it almost made it sound like, hey, just all of our guys that are with us, we made them active no matter what, because we want them active for this game, regardless of whether they're hurt or not, just to be like a part of the team, I guess. But I think the game would have been completely different with Michael Joseph on the field, because he's a physical cornerback. Tyler Vaughn's is going to get Tyler Vaughn's is a great player. He's a very athletic receiver. But I think he's a player that you could absolutely disrupt in press coverage and right off the line. So I think that Michael Joseph, that's kind of right down his wheelhouse. So
yeah, it was a lot less press coverage without Joseph on the field. It was a lot more zone and laying back. So I think it would have definitely changed. It kind of reminded me of the Super Bowl that the Eagles won. Like, I feel like that game may have gone, no offense, Sam, because by any means, I mean, you guys absolutely killed New England in that game as far as offense and defense was concerned. But if Malcolm Butler had been on the field in that game, I feel like it may have gone a little bit different. So that's kind of what this reminded me of with the Michael Joseph situation.
Much like the Arlington Renegades are saying right now, I'll take it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anyway,
and congrats to Luis Perez too.
Yeah, 100%.
Congrats to Luis Perez. I am happy for a lot of the Arlington guys. I just, as a DC Defenders fan, obviously it's bittersweet because, I needed mine.
All right, I'm going to need your guys' assistance on this one, because I'm sure I'm going to forget some names. But I know that Coach Heimbach, the offensive line coach and special teams coordinator, He was with the Birmingham Stallions last season. There was Doug Costin, defensive tackle. There was Victor Bolden, wide receiver. Help me out, Christian. I know there's 2 players I'm missing.
Cameron Hunt, who was on our offensive line,
Thank you.
he was all USFL. And you're saying one more. I can't remember. Was he? Yeah, Cameron Hunt was the only other one I can remember off the top of my head.
That's fair. I'm blanking out. I should have written this down before we came on because I meant to mention it. But anyway, there was 4 players that carried over from the Stallions win over the Stars in the USFL Championship last season, and then just won the XFL Championship as well. And in fact, I think Doug Costin, Cameron Hunt, and a couple other of those guys signed NFL contracts in between. So those guys really cashed out over the last 2 seasons playing spring football, getting a little bit of NFL money, and then going back to spring football once again. I mean, just throwing that out there because that is one thing that not a lot of people are talking about, in the fact that a lot of these guys made that jump. I mean, they've got some substantial win bonuses on both sides in the past 2 seasons. But moving on to the next topic at hand, let's look at the USFL Week 5 games. There were a lot of upsets. Because I don't think any of us expected any of these games to go the way they did. So the first game this weekend was the Pittsburgh Maulers versus the Michigan Panthers. We watched them we watched the Maulers defeat the Panthers 23-7. The Gamblers beat the Stallions 27-20. The Stars beat the Generals 24-21. And the Showboats beat the Breakers 17-10. The last undefeated team falls. Both of Michael's teams lost in the same weekend in dramatic fashion. Neither which game we expected, that's for sure. So let's go to Mark first in this. What were your thoughts on this weekend's games? A lot of upsets here, a lot of games that I don't think a lot of people expected to go this way.
Yeah, I would say a lot of surprises. Pittsburgh winning decisively over Michigan. I wouldn't even say it was a surprise at this point because Pittsburgh had been playing better, but I mean, it's Pittsburgh. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. Michigan's defense, just when you thought they were the real deal, all of a sudden it's like, where are you guys at? So that was an interesting game. The Gamblers with Wilson, that kind of, to me, that was the most surprising in the sense that I did not think that ball from Terry Wilson he showed me something, because I didn't think you could really trust him at all in the passing game. So that was I think that was a big moment for him as a player. You could tell they were pushing him with, oh my God, what's his name? Cozart. So the fact that he went out and executed like that, I'm pretty happy for a player like that. And I feel terrible for Darius Victor. I mean, we all know he's better than that, but 3 fumbles is, you're in the doghouse, I think, after that, unfortunately. So I'm hoping for better days for Darius Victor. I think he does bounce back eventually this season, but that was pretty unfortunate as well, which ultimately led to the Stars winning. And of course, Aguilar getting a record-setting 8 field goals in that game. So
A lot to talk about with Aguilar here in a second. What about the Showboats win over the Breakers? Was that shocking to you guys like it was to me?
Yes.
Definitely.
I mean, yeah. Memphis, I will say that I don't know if New Orleans had any injuries as far as starting linemen were concerned, but the offensive tackles, both of them really struggled in this game, and I don't know if there was any changes. They didn't allude to it on the broadcast, but then again, also getting any information from the USFL broadcast is essentially like trying to perform a root canal on a crocodile. So I don't know what happened there, but it was a tone setter from the start with those tackles just struggling for most of the game because they still move the ball. MBT was still pushing the ball down the field. They were able to get yardage. It just drives were getting killed on third down. which you can't do, obviously, if you want to play football and win. You have to convert
100%.
thirds.
100%. That's what quarterbacks are paid for. That's what I've always been told since the first days of me watching the NFL 20 years ago. Krish, why don't you give us your final thoughts before you got to get out of here?
So yeah, first of all, Troy Williams, man, I apologize. I was very low on you to begin the season. I mean, you know, not gonna lie, you played horrible to begin the season, but you slowly improved. And I really think whoever the quarterback coach down there is, man, like he deserves a raise. I mean, Troy Williams had just progressively gotten better, and it's really surprising. I hope he keeps it up. And then, the Stars finally winning a game. Oh my! For a team that's been hyped up in the off season, articles written about them, and you read these articles, man, and they're just they're going on and on and on about this lineman, that lineman. I'm like, man, some of these linemen, man, I just wonder where they find. I don't know if they go to a local movie theater and recruit some of these guys, man. Oh my God, they can't run down the field. But no, I'm happy. I'm happy they got the win. Luis Aguilar, 8 for 8. Pretty embarrassing that you can't score on offense. Case cook it. But look, it's not all Case. And I'll say this again, man. I'm a Patriots fan. I deal with it with Mac Jones too. Mac Jones is not bad. It's his offensive linemen that are bad. Case has to deal with the same thing. Getting hit from behind, tip balls, all these things. Like, it's hard. To have, and then obviously you go on the other side, Darius Victor, we talked about. 3 fumbles in the game. Like, at some point you gotta look in the mirror and realize, it's football for me. And I think Darius is a really good player. I've said this. And everyone has bad games. But 3 fumbles is like real bad. Like real bad. So you have to figure out, what are you gonna do better? I would be calling back home, making some payments, getting the rent ready, figuring out what your next steps are. So that's my message to Darius. Kyle Loretta, he came in. That game time drive he had, he made a couple short passes. He looked pretty good, and I was happy. Preseason legend for the New York Giants, so really good to see him come in and do his thing. Obviously, I want to see DeAndre Johnson back there, but you know what? They can split reps. I hope they split reps going forward like they did this game. But I know people kind of are fast to kind of decline on DeAndre Johnson. And then we go to the Showboats game. McLeod, what are you doing, buddy? Come on now. McLeod, man. I gave McLeod credit, making some good passes. But then all of a sudden, man, it's just.
So you're going to give Case Cookus a pass on the offensive line, but the Breakers play the worst offensive line game of the entire season, and you're blaming MBT? It's so weird.
Their offensive line is rough, I won't lie. But, I expected more from the Breakers. And then, obviously Michigan we talked about, like, they're awful. They need to go Carson Strong. Eric Marty, I know you're probably watching this on LinkedIn, man. Like, what? Come on, man. Carson Strong time. Let's go. I love Josh Love, but at some point, man, the love has to come to an end. Let's go suit up and go with the Strong. Overall, I would say it was a pretty decent week of USFL football. I'm not gonna lie. If I had to change teams, I would be a Gamblers fan, but I can't do that because I've already switched teams too many times. Even I will admit that. Now, watching Birmingham go down to Houston was as good as it gets. I'm a Magoo guy, man, but man, y'all have some real problems down there. I believe in Skip. I love the program he's built. He's built it really well. I thought that UAB should have hired Skip. And I know Skip was in consideration for that job, but Skip's a real coach, so he'll get it right. But man, Houston, Curtis Johnson, man, their receiving core in Houston, I will say on the show, is point blank the best receiving core in the league. Houston, and you can give me that look. But till Corey Coleman can catch more than a 20-yard bomb, I mean, we get a problem, man. We get a problem. So I'm a pretty good week of USFL football. I would give it, I mean, out of 10, because my ratings are really important. Out of 10, I would give it a solid 7. It couldn't get better. It could be really worse, but a lot to improve on. And with that said, the sensei is out. Have a good rest of the night. I'm coming back hot. Let's go. Let's go, baby.
Hot takes with Krish. Terry Wilson. I do want to give credit because Mark did mention Terry Wilson, and I got to tell you, he looked really, really, really solid. He made some of the best throws all weekend in all the games combined that took place there. So kudos to him. The gamblers like Curtis Johnson, man. I mean, I got to give him his props because nobody expected that with the late change at the head coaching spot. That defense was ravaged with like how many starters did they end up losing or whatever it was? They lost a ton, didn't they, Sam? And I just Houston, man, they're looking like the real deal down there. And then Michigan on the other side. I think I mentioned it last week. Josh Love is he's starting to look like the Josh Love that was at Pittsburgh, and it's not. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable for them. They're going to have to commit to maybe making a quarterback change and sticking with Carson Strong down there. So if they want to win games, because the North is wide open, and right now Michigan is not looking like they're probably looking like one of the worst teams in the league right now, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's been a crazy change of pace there. I mean, honestly, it's kind of funny that Chris said everything he did. That, I mean, obviously, I don't even know where to address everything, so I'll just leave that alone. But basically, Carson Strong threw 23 passes in this game. Josh Love only took 12 attempts. So they are leaning more towards Strong, but I would agree that they need to just pick a quarterback and go with it. Eric Marty, if you are watching, I doubt you are. You're probably, focused on your next opponent. We talked about this, man. I want to see Carson Strong, former Eagle player. But anyway, I definitely think that regardless of who you pick, you need to pick one because it's throwing both guys off their rhythm. We've talked about it at length. Michael and I both believe that if you're going with the 2-quarterback system, they need to give you 2 different things. Carson Strong and Josh Love are basically spitting images of each other in terms of what they give you. One's not a dramatically athletic version of the other. Let's put it that way.
Strong's knee looked all right. I mean, he did take one hit there where it looked like he was holding his knee, but he came back the very next play and ran, 14 yards sideways because he was under pressure. But that's beside the point. His knee looked all right. So I hope it's good throughout the course of the week and it's not too bad. But I was surprised with the mobility, considering all this talk about his knee being such a huge concern and whatnot. And I did want to give out one more quick. Who was it now? I don't even remember. Well, Troy Williams, obviously at Pittsburgh. I think I picked Pittsburgh to win last week, and I mean, I told you guys week 2, they need to stick with him. Coming out of week 1, they should stick with him. Like he's just he looks good out there. He looks really good.
So, ironically enough, we all picked Pittsburgh.
That's right, because you were like, I was surprised it was a clean sweep, because that's right, you said that. I remember that now.
So, get this. Mark picked their score. Spot on, 23. 23 points. He picked 20 points for Michigan, but we all had him right around that range. You said 24-20. I said 21-18. So we all had him scoring about 21 to 24 points and winning the game. So that's kind of ironic that we actually all lean that direction. I do want to give Mark credit because he picked Pittsburgh, Houston, New Jersey, and New Orleans. So he at least went 2-2. He saw something in Houston that he liked and ended up picking their way.
If I remember correctly, I think all 3 of us did say that Houston could win that game, though. Like, that we wouldn't be surprised if it happened. I was just more shocked because, like Mark said, Terry Wilson.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, you're 100% correct. I said 26-23 Birmingham. You said 21-20 Birmingham. So obviously, neither of us were convinced. We all said New Jersey, and we all said New Orleans. We all thought New Orleans was going to blow Memphis out. We all thought New Jersey was going to blow out Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we were probably the most wrong in the New Jersey-Philadelphia game.
Yeah, in fact, I'll go ahead and read our scores real quick. Mark had 31-13. Mike had 34-14. I had 31-24. So I technically got the Stars score right, just not the opponent's score. But Christian, we kind of left you there silent for a minute. What are your thoughts on these games and all these upsets? I mean, I know you're a Stallions fan, so did you see that coming at all?
Well, I'll start off with the first game, which was the Panthers game. And like, if I haven't been on in a couple weeks, but if I recall, when we talked about the Maulers, I said they're a very raw team. Like, they just got to get things going, and I can see them being good. And that's exactly what's going on here. They slowly are making that progress. And it did shock to me with the Panthers, but it was shocking that they kind of flip-flopped. Like, the Maulers didn't look good for the first couple weeks, and the Panthers were killing it. And then it got a switch. The Panthers are like, and the Maulers are like, they actually might be contenders now. And then when it comes to the Stallions Gamblers game, it's been the same problems we've been having basically the entire game, where it's our defense is keeping us in the game, and our offense they need to wake up. And like, I love Magoo. I love the guy. Like, I think Curtis Johnson on a post-game conference said like he's got so much like, what's the word? Respect for Magoo. Like, Magoo is doing everything he can, and I still think he's the best option for Stallions to move on. Like, I don't think you should switch to Jalen Moore or anything. Like, and I also am a strong believer that if you stick with Jamar Smith, still would have got the same outcome, because I feel like overall our offense is just too inconsistent, and it showed out there. Like, Davion Davis in the first drive couldn't catch like 2 big passes. And then I want to bring this out because so many Stallions fans were like, this really scared me, because I'm a Cowboys fan, so like I know what it's like to be in this position. But inconsistent offense, the defense keeps them in games, and the fan base is blaming games on the refs, and they're thinking they're the top dog because they won a championship. Tell me that doesn't sound like the Cowboys to you. So, like, I know people are blaming the refs for this one, but I'm telling you, I am, for the most part, except for that Rams-Saints conference game, you can never put a game on the refs. It's overall. And I think overall for that game, offense was too inconsistent, and the defense held as long as they can until they eventually broke. And they took the game over. That was a good game for the Gamblers to deserve that win. And then the next day with the Stars, like, props to the kicker, but like, if I'm the Stars, I'm not too exactly excited, because like, you didn't score any offensive points. That was all field goals. So I would be a little worried on that front. And then ultimately the Breakers game, I didn't really look. That was like the one game I missed, but I was shocked ultimately, because I was like, they're like one of the most consistent teams. Like, they've been winning, and then they lost, and I'm like, what? So ultimately, this was the week of upsets. It seemed like those who were supposed to win didn't win, and then I felt like the only road team I think that got stronger was the Maulers and the Gamblers. So that South is looking really difficult, and as a Birmingham Stallion fan, I'm a little scared.
No, I think that's a great take. It looks like we have another imbalance in between the divisions. I mean, you look at how the XFL stacked up. The South was way better, the South was way worse than the North, and we got it opposite in the USFL, where the South is way better than the North currently, which I would not have predicted this at all. I was not a huge fan of the Curtis Johnson hire. I know he was a prior head coach on the college level. I just personally wasn't sure what to expect. I was a huge fan of the Mike Nolan hire. I was a huge fan of the Ray Horton hire. I was a huge fan of the John DeFilippo hire, but I just wasn't sure what to make of what all these rosters were going to look like after all the turnover that we saw this offseason. So it was interesting to see this week. I think we kind of reset our expectations for everybody this week. But it's it's just another indication that you never really know what to expect from a football game, and I think that's why we all love it so much.
Yeah, football's so unpredictable, and on top of that, you figure that it's nice to see the parity in the league. It's nice to have
100%.
it because, like, you just never know with these games, and that usually means good football.
100%.
The defenses, man, the defenses have just been up and down in the USFL so far. That's, to me, what's standing out. But
I agree. So I do have a question for you guys. If you had to pick one biggest surprise of the week between XFL, USFL, whatever it may be, what would be your biggest surprise of the weekend?
For me, would probably be the Gamblers beating the Stallions. Believe it or not, I know that it would probably be easy to pick the Showboats over the Breakers or the Renegades over the Defenders, but I don't. When you have a backup quarterback and you're in a situation where new head coach so close to the start of the season, a defense that was ravaged by the XFL and NFL alike, and you're predicted at the ranked 8th in the power rankings across the board, and people were comparing you to the Orlando Guardians at the start of the season, and to be able to go in there and beat the defending champions in a pretty good manner, I would say is probably one of the biggest surprises, even if they're trending in the right direction, just because of everything I mentioned, I guess, really.
That's definitely fair. Christian, what's your thoughts?
I really liked his take because I also thought the Gamblers were a very just disorganized team, and they shaped up and beat us pretty good. But I think my take would be what I thought was more confusing to me was the Stars not scoring a single offensive touchdown with Case Cookis. Because we all know Case Cookis, we've seen him at his peak. Like, he took his team, halfway into the championship. And then in this game against, the Generals, which they're kind of a hot and cold team, didn't put up any points. No rushing, no passing, nothing. It was just all relied on the kicker. If this was an NFL world, we all know you cannot rely on the field goals to win a game. Like, I think if it was any other team, I think you could even put the worst NFL team against the Stars and they just kept kicking field goals, that team will win. So I just thought it was a little shocking for the Stars that they didn't get any offensive points, and I would just be a little bit worried going to your next game.
100%. I'm worried as a Stars fan. Mark, what was your biggest surprise of the weekend?
Yeah, I agree with Christian. I think the Stars for me was the biggest surprise, just because I'm a big fan of team chemistry, which direction teams are trending, how they're playing on the field. And the Stars going into this game just looked absolutely awful. The news going into the beginning of last week was also not good, with a lot of injuries, and the team just seemed like they were in absolute disarray. So, you look at Arlington. Arlington had been playing well. You look at Memphis. Memphis seemed to have turned a corner with Cole Kelly. So, to me, it was definitely the Stars hanging in there. And Darius Victor coughing up the ball 3 times. There was just so many surprises in this game that, to me, I would have never seen it coming. So
100%. I would agree with your guys' take. For me, as much as the Renegades were a surprising victor in the XFL Championship game, I had said it on the Markcast actually right before I jumped off because I wanted to get into it more. But the Renegades defense had the most forced fumbles and the most interceptions in the league, whereas the DC Defenders relied on being the most efficient offense in the league with the least amount of interceptions, but the highest touchdown to interception ratio. Let me rephrase that. So with that being said, I knew that if the Renegades could get a couple turnovers, that it would flip the script of the game, but I didn't expect it to be in such dominating fashion. So, that was kind of surprising, but when they got 3 interceptions, it's hard to say that it's surprising that DC lost when they threw 3 interceptions. And I know that's grand scheme of things, not, short-term outlook of the game type deal, but it's what ultimately turned the tide of that game.
You guys can't see it because I wear a headset, but I have my ears pierced, and my wife made me DC Defenders and New Orleans Breakers earrings, and I wore them this week as I was heading into the week, and both my teams lost, so I told her to stop making me shit.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I blame the losses on her. So yeah,
that's funny. Oh man. So speaking of everything that we just talked about and the turnovers in the Stars game that ultimately amounted to a victory, we're gonna go right into Michael's segment that don't impress me much.
That don't impress me much.
I hope this works out okay. My internet's been kind of choppy here recently, but this week on my segment here that don't impress me much, it's Darius Victor. We've mentioned it a few times already. 3 fumbles, poor overall ball handling skills from him. His arms are massive. I didn't realize how big his arms were until they really like showed him after, I think it was that second or third fumble. Basically, I don't like ever blaming one person for a loss of any sorts, but Darius Victor played a large percentage into this loss for the Generals, because if I am correct, I think 2 of those fumbles came in Stars territory, one inside the red zone, which led to field goals. I believe it's 6 points off those fumbles for Philadelphia. So you take away those fumbles and you handle up your ball handling skills a lot better, and this game could go in an opposite direction, considering it was only a 3-point victory. So this week, Darius Victor, that don't impress me much, man.
I would definitely agree that was a shocking performance from Darius Victor. They say thick thighs save lives. Well, apparently thick forearms cause fumbles, because that's apparently what happened this weekend. So hopefully Victor gets back on the side here. Oh, they're huge. But man, he's a workout warrior in general. I mean, if you kind of follow him on social media, I swear all the dude does is play football and work out, which, I mean, that's why he's so good at what he does. Because if you look at his game, like, he's not really the greatest receiver in the world. He's not really good at, the kickoff return game and stuff. He is literally just a power runner, despite the fact that he's a smaller guy. And I mean, it's because he's literally packs a punch, for lack of a better term. But we're going to go ahead and discuss the DFS players of the week with Mark. That is our fantasy guru expert. So Mark, who do you have for us this week?
Yeah, so I'll start off with quarterback. Some of these guys are guys that we have talked about a little bit, but I think Troy Williams at $8,400, he was the best quarterback on the slate last week, displaying production through the air and via the ground. So we have a lot of quarterbacks that are priced up. Troy Williams, I think, is pretty safe to see a full workload, which you don't always get in an alt football league. So he's still very underpriced at $8,400, and he is a dual threat quarterback. He is a tough matchup as of recent with Memphis, but they are on the season the second worst pass defense, and do seem to be susceptible so far in games this year to dual threat quarterbacks. So I think he's a great option at quarterback. If we're going to go in a different direction at quarterback, another guy that we've already talked about is Terry Wilson. We have to see if Kenji Bahar is going to be out due to injury again or not. I have a feeling he might try and make it back for this game. He really didn't look that banged up in the game the other week. So, but if he is out, Terry Wilson is only $7,500. He obviously is another dual threat quarterback, but he proved that he could move the ball through the air as well. That beautiful deep ball to Ratliff Williams. That was my favorite throw. I think between the USFL, XFL, that was my favorite throw for both leagues so far this year. So he's a great value play against the Generals defense, who just gave up 24 points to a struggling Philadelphia Stars, and the Generals are the worst team in the league against the pass, giving up 1,127 yards through 5 games. So more than happy to take a shot on Wilson at his price point if Bahar is out again. As far as running backs goes, so we talked about how Darius Victor fumbled 3 times. So I do like the idea of Trey Williams at $6,300. It's a pretty inexpensive play for a guy who has really looked pretty darn good when he came in for relief work. I was very shocked that they just continued to go with Victor after, he clearly his head was just not in the game, man. So as we've already alluded several times, so got stopped at the 1 yard line. I mean, it was a disaster for him. So Trey Williams, I thought he graded out very, very well. I do think that Victor will bounce back eventually this season. I mean, the guy's just been through a whole lot. He's got a lot of grit. I mean, if you guys, I don't know if you know his background or not, but he's been through a lot, even personally. So I'm rooting him on, but I do think that he's in the doghouse this week. Trey Williams has earned an opportunity for more snaps and carries, and he gets a matchup against the 3rd worst rush defense in the league against Houston. As far as another running back goes with the Memphis Showboats, I'm going to go with Kareth White. So $5,500. It's another really inexpensive play for a running back that is going to receive a really nice workload. So I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Hills. I do think Hills is a good play as well against the Stars. Mark Thompson, I don't know if Mark Thompson is going to be the play this week, although I love how he has ran so far this year. They're so high priced, though. They're over $11K. So I'll take a guy that's literally half the price who also is going to receive a full workload. And Pittsburgh defense, they have been tough, but White has shown that he can also contribute in the passing game as well. A really nice check down option for Cole Kelly, and really kind of a nice security blanket here. As far as wide receiver, Henny at $6,600 is still just way too cheap. He is, they pretty much game plan around him on a week-to-week basis. He's probably not going to go under owned like he was last week. I don't know what everyone was doing. He was like in single-digit ownership last week and even cheaper than this price point. So I do suspect that his ownership will go up, but I don't even care. He's an incredible value play for a guy that's going to get heavy usage, and he's in a good matchup here. Another wide receiver, if you're looking to save some money, is Trey Quinn at $3,600. He's just too cheap for a guy who has, had 5+ targets in 3 of the 5 games this season. Safety valve, really, in an offense that's struggling to stretch the ball down the field. I do expect the work to continue for him in a matchup against Birmingham, a middle of the pack defense against the pass, but in a game where they are really in a play from behind type of implied game script. So I think Trey Quinn is a great value play at $3,600. And lastly, at wide receiver, Cam Eccles, Looper, $8,000. So he's pricey, and he was very quiet last week, but this is almost part of the reason for the play. He's still actively involved in that offense. I think they go to the pass game a little bit more in results of, what happened within the run game. I think that offense evolves a little bit where they're going to try a lot of toss plays to Trey Williams, a lot of outside zone, and some play action with some shots down the field. So I do think that favors Cam Eccles Looper. And after a quiet game, I think he is going to have all the leverage in the world against the field in single-digit ownership. Lastly, if you are going to go tight end, I'm probably going to pass on tight end this week. So Sage Surratt is just super high owned, but he's $9,500. Really, you can't go wrong. You're probably going to get at least a good solid 10 points out of him. But also, you're riding the field on that front. So it's kind of a more of a cash game play than a tournament. And Jay Sternberger, he's got a little bit of a tougher matchup. So at $8,700, I'll probably pass on him this week. But I am interested in playing Sternberger probably a few weeks out from now when his price goes down just a little bit more.
I would say, have you seen the trend, Mark, with this real quick while we're on the subject of in the spring leagues, it feels like you almost have to pay down at running back and wide receiver because it's like 1 or 2 tight ends and it's like 3 or 4 quarterbacks that you're going to really want to be able to get, unless you happen to get one of those backups, right?
There's not as much variety in value plays. Absolutely. It's harder to hit on a value play because the games are so volatile in general. So you got to follow the usage at the end of the day. And if you can get some lower priced options that, do receive some heavy usage, that opens up the whole thing. These contests are small enough where end of the day, There's just a lot. There's a lot of people that play these games that just spur of the moment play them and have no idea who they're playing or what they're doing. So, just don't overthink it. I think, in my opinion, from a USFL DFS perspective.
That's fair. Definitely fair. So moving on to the next subject at hand, there have been quite a few XFL players already signed on the first day of eligibility today. If you weren't aware, it was the first day they could actually sign an NFL contract. Prior to this, they were allowed to go work out with them, but they could not technically ink anything official. That changed today, and we saw 11 players signed. If you give me just a moment, I'll pull up the list here. We've got defensive lineman C.J. Brewer, went from the Roughnecks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lucas Dennis, safety, from St. Louis Battlehawks to Atlanta Falcons. Ben DiNucci, quarterback, Seattle, went to Denver. Austin Below, defensive lineman, Seattle to Seattle, ironically enough. Jack Heflin, defensive lineman from Houston Roughnecks, goes to New Orleans Saints. Antoine Jackson from Seattle to Carolina. Nico Lalos from Seattle to New Orleans. LaCale London, defensive lineman from St. Louis, Atlanta. John Parker Romo, the best kicker in the XFL in my personal opinion, went from San Antonio to Detroit. Bryce Thompson, safety, from Seattle to Miami. Barry Wesley, offensive lineman, Seattle to Atlanta. So first real quick takeaway is 6 of 11 players signed are from Seattle. Does that surprise anybody given the background of Randy Mueller?
It doesn't surprise me considering when you look at the overall players that were signed there. Ben DiNucci, I don't think, did you mention Ben DiNucci's name? Did you say it? I don't remember. But yeah, I think overall, you take a look at Seattle, I'm a little bit more surprised that some of the Battlehawks, like more of their in the trenches guys, didn't get signed as depth pieces somewhere to a teams, because I felt like St. Louis had one of the better front sevens on defense and front five and offensive line in the league. So I'm curious about what's going to happen with these defenders and Renegades once they take the time to celebrate here and see how many players from those two teams end up signing over the course of the next week or so. Because let's face it, those are the two teams in the championship games. You should be expecting a decent amount of players to go. So, and I believe the guy that signed, I forgot his name already. You just said it. The guy that signed from Seattle to Atlanta, I think he was the first one to get a camp invite too from the XFL. Wesley.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be clear, the list I was reading was the XFL official list that they put out today. XFL Analyst has reported that there are some other players that have signed. I'm not going to get into all of them right now. I'm just saying, if you'd like to see some of the other players that will probably be announced in the next couple days, go check out XFL Analyst on Instagram or Twitter. He's very good about producing some of that stuff. Although take everything he says with a grain of salt, much like every independent media source, just to be clear. Sometimes we can make mistakes. Some more comments here. Sorry, go ahead.
I make mistakes every day.
100%, as do I.
I am curious. I'm curious if there is a correlation between teams and how they finished the season and how many invites / signees that they get, because it seems like to me Houston and Seattle have been very busy. I would imagine we're going to obviously see more from Arlington and DC here, but I don't know. I don't know the numbers, so I am curious if there is a linear correlation between standings and the number of invites and signees.
It feels like Seattle and Houston really came out of the gate with the invites. I did see some a couple of Guardians sprinkled in there. There was a few Brahmas, sprinkled in as well. I think John Parker Romo is going to win that kicking job in Detroit as well. And then DC and Arlington, obviously, we don't know, but I can't think of. There's a couple of Vegas Vipers that I saw, and a few Battlehawks, but really, it's been the teams that made the playoffs that we really should keep an eye on so far.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was trying to look up Mark Lilley-Bridges' background, the Houston Roughnecks defensive player personnel, or sorry, director of player personnel. I'm sorry. I personally was thinking that maybe it was the prior NFL connections that are helping some of these things along, but I mean, it must not be, because Lilley-Bridge only has a very brief background in the NFL as far as of a player personnel type person. So it's kind of interesting to look and see these, how they're kind of coming out. And again, I fully expect that we'll see countless more over the next couple of days. By next week, we'll probably be talking about a list of 30 to 40 guys who have been signed, I would imagine. Maybe more, maybe less. It'll be interesting to track all this and see if which league wins this battle, so to speak, and see how many players are signed from each league.
I just think it goes to show that spring ball works.
100%.
And I think on top of that, I think if you take a look at the XFL and the USFL, I think the other thing they proved is these two leagues can coexist without
100%.
any major issues. And I went on a rant about it a few weeks ago, but I really honestly believe that these two leagues have proven that you can do this and have it succeed and be, high quality football, good leagues, good structure. Eventually these leagues will be able to build enough of a following that you won't have to see them continually use the stepping stone to the NFL as a selling point. It's smart to use it right now because these leagues are so fresh and new, but eventually they won't have to do that.
100%. So given the fact that we all are on the same page, that we think many, many more players will be signed over the next couple of days, I was curious to get some of your guys' thoughts over some of the players you expect to be signed from any team. I mean, any XFL team. Give me a couple players that you think would be signed, Michael.
Ja'Cory Pearson. I think he's going to sign in San Francisco, but I think it's going to be, unfortunately for him, that's a fairly deep wide receiving core. I know it doesn't seem like it because there's not a lot of household names there, but I think he's going to take a very Cavante Turpin-esque type. I think he's going to get a chance to kick returns, punt returns, but they're already showing camps of him blowing by defenders. Now, granted, these mini camps right now are also guys that are, either rookies or in very similar boats as Ja'Cory Pearson. They're fighting for a spot to sign with the roster, but he's been impressive from what I've seen online. I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't, but San Francisco is a spot that usually tries to give people chances, so I could see him trying to get on in some capacity there. Lucky Jackson, we mentioned it before, Abram Smith for DC, who, to me, I don't know, did DC ever, did the XFL ever announce who the MVP of the league was? Not the championship game, but the actual league? Did they ever announce that? I don't think anybody's announced that, did they?
Wasn't it Teyamu?
No, he was the offensive player of the year.
I thought they gave it to McCarron.
Did he win it though officially? I know he was the front runner, but did he officially win it?
I thought he did.
Let me look it up real quick.
Because I'm still making the case for Abram Smith.
I think McCarron got it.
Did he? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because I didn't see it announced, which is weird.
AJ McCarron named XFL MVP. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good for AJ McCarron. He definitely deserved it. I would have made a case for Abram Smith. But anyways, Abram Smith, Lucky Jackson, I think they're both, likely to see it and get a chance. And one more guy on defense. And for some reason, I just had his name on the tip of my tongue, and I completely just let it go. Arlington, the linebacker, the guy he led the league. Payne, Donald Payne.
Yeah.
The only thing with Donald Payne, though, I question whether or not isn't he a little bit on the older end?
Yeah.
Players.
He's past 28, I think.
I would say he's a little bit on the older end, but I could see somebody bringing him in as a depth piece, maybe to catch on because of his veteran status. But again, it goes back to that contract situation and people's salary cap situation. But I think Donald Payne did enough to at least get an invite and maybe sign through the preseason. We'll see if he sticks.
I hope so. Former guest of the show, super good guy. I actually have a picture of a message from him weeks ago. This was when Arlington was like at the doldrums of being terrible, and they just won a game. And I was like, man, great game. You had a good performance. And he sends back, yeah, I think we're gonna get this thing back on track. We've got all the makings of a championship team. So even back then, they were talking about it. They thought they could still win. So that's coaching in my mind. All this time we've been harping on how bad the coaching was, at least on the offensive side there. And it turns out this whole time, coaching is kind of what kept them together and kept them through all the adversity that they went through, and ended up winning a championship because of it.
Made no mistake about it, though. That offense was dreadful for a very, very long time.
It was 100%
offensive play calling was really
it was
really
so
bad.
It was so bad for a long time.
In fairness, though, they didn't have a quarterback. Clearly,
sure.
the guys that they had, they did not believe in at all. So,
who did they start the year with?
It was Kyle Sloter and Drew Plitt, and then Kevin Anderson is the third. Now we all know Sloter is the QB3 in Birmingham.
I will give Drew Plitt a little bit of a pass for this year, because he would be considered a true rookie. So I just don't know how much Coach Hayes really trusted on trying to open it up for him. And apparently Sloter just never meshed well there, or whatever it was, because
that wasn't the offense for him.
And he was complaining on social media.
His attitude, man.
And that's probably why he's the third string quarterback in the USFL now.
We're not going to see him. I don't want to see him on the field. I don't think he's a fit for the team, but whatever.
I thought it was a terrible signing by Birmingham, personally.
Yeah, I'm on that boat.
I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. But Pierce, any NFL players or any XFL players bound for the NFL in your opinion?
Well, I'll try to bring some up of my personal team, the Guardians, because honestly, there's not a lot of guys you can really bring up. I know Dormany, I think, got an invite with the Bills. I don't really think that's going to come out of anything. I know Devin Darrington, who evolved over Jermaine Martin, he got an invite by the Commanders. I can see that shot. That's a def piece there. And then Cody Latimer obviously was our biggest piece, but the problem is he's in his 30s. Nobody's going to want him. So I don't think he goes anywhere. I think there was also another dude, Kavion Patton. I think he was a defensive tackle. I know he got an invite. I feel like he could definitely get picked up. So he's probably my elected favorite to get picked up in that team specifically. But I think I'm more interested on the guys that are older making it in, like AJ McCarron, who obviously did really well. He got MVP. Our NFL team's going to look for him to be in a solid backup because he's proved that already. He was with the Falcons and the Raiders. Are they going to still look at him? And then same with Josh Gordon, who I don't think he was that big because of Ja'Cory Pearson. But can he also get some looks? Or is it they're old? This is kind of their play field now. Just keep them there type of deal. So I'm more intrigued with the older names because a lot of the new names, what was his name? Mikael London. He was on the Bears the season before, so he was just fresh off the roster, and then now he's back on the roster. Some of those guys were like Ben DiNucci. He was on the Cowboys before he got cut, and then played for the XFL. Now he's back on the NFL.
To be fair, DiNucci was completely out of football for 2022. He was on the Cowboys up until the 2022 preseason. Yeah. He was released. And then he never re-signed with another team. So, in my personal opinion, the XFL is the reason that he is back in the NFL right now. And that's just my opinion. But I'm willing to bet if you asked him, he would say the same thing currently.
He's definitely interesting. He's definitely an interesting take because, I just watching the last preseason with him in Dallas, I don't think he was necessarily bad. I definitely think he's a guy you want to at least give the chance. So I thought it was interesting. He could have gotten the invites or tryouts and just doesn't work out. But it was interesting. But I don't recall when the XFL signed their quarterbacks. Like I don't know, because I know like with the AAF, you have to send them like months in advance. So like maybe DiNucci like signed a contract kind of earlier. That's why he wasn't checking in with any teams. But like that, I don't know the details on how they did that. But I did think that was interesting. And then like, I'm just more interested about the older players and then some of the injured players that didn't get to finish the season. I think Payne was not playing. Michael Joseph obviously was hurt, but he was really hot. Ben Kirk was a very high name up there, and then when he was out there, he wasn't necessarily great. So like, I'm more intrigued of the like kind of the wild card names, not the very simple like Ja'Cour Pearson. Like I want to see some of the like really names that like nobody really remembers.
That's
So
fair.
I think
Mark?
DiNucci has a chance to actually make that Denver roster if they carry 3 quarterbacks.
Oh, 100%. In fact, the other guy on the roster, Jared, I'm going to butcher his last name, but I think it's Guarantano, something like that. He was an XFL target before he signed a contract with the Broncos. Then he was with the Broncos, I think, for the tail end of the NFL season, but that was under the last coaching staff. So, somebody pointed it out today on social media. I apologize that I'm not giving credit to whoever it was, but they think that DiNucci actually has a better shot of making the roster than he does. And Snowman took it one step further and said he might even eventually be QB2.
He very possibly could be. He very
it
possibly could
matters.
be. It's all about opportunity and landing spot, because like Devin Darrington, like Pierce said, unfortunately for him, landed in a terrible spot in Washington. It's a horrible spot because they have 3 running backs that are guaranteed to make that roster already, and they'll be lucky to carry 4. So,
yeah, I would agree. I agree that they'll be lucky to carry 4. I would say that I wouldn't count Darrington out because of the type of backs that they like. It'll be interesting to see, though. He was very exciting to watch.
And one more thing before we get to Mark. I'm sorry to cut you off when I did that, Mark, but I had the DiNucci thought. Some of these guys that they may not make the roster, but they possibly could still make practice squads and be on those practice squads for the whole year too.
100%.
So, depending if they have eligibility left. So Darrington could make that team, but it may be on a practice squad, level.
Are there still NFL practice squad eligibility?
I think they kind of expanded it over with the pandemic. So I think anybody can be in a practice squad now.
Yeah, anybody that has experience can be on it, but there's still a X amount of time that you can be on a practice squad before you use it up.
I never looked in that detailed one.
So like a guy like Joe Flacco, who's never spent a career on the practice squad, you could sign him and throw him on your practice squad for however many games or whatever, because he's never been there, so he technically still has eligibility.
That explains a lot. All right, now that everybody's talked, Mark, what are your NFL to XFL players, or XFL to NFL?
Well, I was gonna say, and I think I saw this news earlier today or last night with Barku getting signed by the Steelers. So I thought that was I'll just point out that was kind of fascinating, given that he had a Cleveland invite. Steelers are notorious for going after XFL guys. They went after XFL guys hard after 2020, just after the 5 games. So I would not be surprised. I could see Hakeem Butler possibly getting a look here with Pittsburgh and possibly even signing. Trent Harris, to me, with Seattle, I think he kind of fits that mold there. And I mean, he led the league in sacks in the XFL. He had 10 in 10 games. So I thought he was really good. Patrick was another one of my guys, so he already got signed. I think Darius Shepard, that could be a really good spot given the news with the Williams getting suspended, and actually more importantly, I would say for Shepard, with Cephas getting removed, because there's a wide open special teams / offensive spot for him, especially at the beginning of the season. So I think Darius Shepard is a guy to me to keep an eye out for him. Abram Smith is an obvious one, and I would also say Sal Cannella. Sal Cannella was arguably the best tight end in the league. He showed great ability to get downfield. He's still a younger player, so I would not be surprised if we saw Sal Cannella sign on with someone.
Definitely good picks. Did you say that Shepard signed with Detroit already?
No, I don't think so. Unless
Okay.
are you saying he did?
That's what I thought you were saying. I thought
Oh,
I missed
no.
something. I was gonna say Maurice Alexander is still there technically, so he might have a big role this season. I mean, he was there all last season, kind of bounced on and off the practice squad. Maybe it's his time.
Well, I think Detroit right now has Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Reynolds.
They drafted somebody. I feel like they might have drafted somebody too. Antoine Green from North Carolina, they drafted him. Josh Reynolds is there. Jameson Williams will be back after 6 games. But after that, there is really, I mean, even Antoine Green, he was a 6th round pick. So they really are kind of thin at that point. And a lot of these teams are carrying up to 6, 7 wide receivers nowadays. So if Shepard does sign there is a very good chance he could carve out a role. Maurice Alexander as well, a pretty decent role with that team this year.
And Cephas was the special teams guy. I mean,
Yep.
Shepard has proved he can do it offensively and on special teams. So I thought it was very telling that how quick they were to send an invite to him. Like they were knocking on his door. It was one of the first invites to get out there. So
Interesting. What'll be interesting for me to follow are guys like Mark Gilbert. Mark Gilbert's over there playing for the Pittsburgh Maulers right now. He was on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster the last 2 off seasons, but never stuck like on the active roster. So now he's with the Maulers. He's getting an opportunity to play. He's balling out. Dude's got NFL size. He's like 6'2", 210 pounds, something like that. So he's playing great. Does he get an opportunity to go back to the Steelers, or did he just lose his roster spot to Luke Barku? I mean, that's one of the situations where it's like, does the USFL truly lose out on some of these camp spots that they would otherwise get if they were a couple months earlier?
I think the good news for the USFL is their season's going to end at a time where you start seeing camp injuries really start taking a toll. As much as I hate talking about injuries in football, it happens every year, and their season will end right about the time that some of these mini camps heading into other camps, like guys are banged up, a hamstring here, a quad there, maybe an ACL unfortunately gets blown out somewhere. So it correlates to that, and that's where the USFL is going to have their advantage, or going to kind of fill in the spots there. But who knows? We won't know which league has the smarter schedule. XFL you would think would have the advantage because they end earlier, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything because the USFL did have people stick last year. So
100%, it's going to be fun to follow. I mean, it's just another layer to all of this. We talk about the XFL and the USFL competing for certain players because obviously there was a competition. As much as people don't want to play it up like that, 60 some odd players did jump to the XFL. So
can we get my man Jeff Badette an invite? Come on.
For real. Yeah, he definitely belongs on a roster. I'd take him in Philly in a heartbeat, but that's just me. He might have a tough time making the roster.
I'll take him in Dallas.
Receiver.
But they invited Kenyon Rambo
too. Like, it's so deep though. Between Philadelphia and Dallas, it's so deep with the amount of players that are there. Like, a lot of these guys need to be smart, or I don't want to be smart because they pretty much are going to take any invite that they get. But a lot of these guys have to hope that they're going to spots with the tail end of that roster is kind of thin or thinner or more inexperienced, because Philadelphia's wide receiving core, I mean, it's deep. You guys are deep, and Dallas has three wide receivers off the top, right off the jump, that could be Pro Bowlers any given day of the year. And I hate saying that. I hate saying that about both your teams. I hope both your teams were to get hit by meteors. I wouldn't care. It'd be fine by that. But as a Washington fan, like I got to give respect to where it is, and you guys have deep wide receiving cores. I mean,
It's about time. They were terrible for years, man.
To be fair, our schedules are pretty tough this year. Maybe
Oh.
it's Washington, maybe it's New York. Who knows?
so tough this year.
No doubt. So let's move on to a little bit of USFL news, and I'm sure I'm not going to cover everything. So for whoever's watching, if there's something that you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments for us. But the main piece of news that came out today that I was rather shocked by, and I'm going to butcher this name, Liram Haj LaRuha. I think that's how it's spelled.
He's
Calgary
on the Cowboys. I have to remember his last name, but I don't remember it.
Calgary Stampeders, baby.
Yeah,
he's
100%.
in the
CFL. Yeah, hell yeah.
So he spent 6 seasons in the CFL, and then he had an interesting career change when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. He had been going to the NFL Combine and kind of kicking for the Combine for many years, and he finally turned some heads, and it ended up being John Fossil with the Rams at the time, the Los Angeles Rams. He signed with them in 2020. He was with them for a couple weeks, lost to Sam Sloman, and then ultimately ended up with Dallas, Carolina, spent some time with Washington, and now he's signed by the Stars. Literally the day that Luis Aguilar was named Special Teams Player of the Week for kicking 8 field goals, 9 kickoffs, and 3 punts. So I thought this was an interesting conversation to have. What do you guys think is going on here? Is Luis hurt? Is he not going to play this week? Are we seeing a change in the guard? Do we see the Stars actually cut 2 Special Teams Player of the Year 2 seasons in a row?
Maybe, I don't know. I think to me the only logical explanation is maybe Aguilar is like, I'm out. I've done enough. I've got the tape. Release me, and I'm gonna go
to Dallas.
Get my invite. Yeah.
Go to Dallas because Fossil's looking for apparently any kicker right now. So bring him to Dallas. I'll take him. So,
Sam, didn't you say that Luis found out, like, just by, like, was it by you?
By me.
Yeah,
I let him know.
The only thing that I can logically think here is maybe they're bringing him in as a kickoff specialist and maybe to relieve Aguilar from punting. It's a very weird choice though with the short rosters in the USFL. Like the amount of inactive players each week is insane to me. Considering you're playing football, like there's you gotta have depth. Like you can't have the bag boy or the peanut guy come down and play. We did see the Toronto Maple Leafs lose to a Zamboni driver, so maybe that's what some of these teams are hoping for. I don't know though. It's the only thing I can really think of is maybe he's just stronger on kickoffs, probably more accurate to dictate where the ball goes, and hard to say that somebody on kickoffs would be more accurate than a guy who went 8 for 8, and put up 24 points by himself for a team. But I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. I don't know. It's weird to me.
Yeah. So
interesting move by the front office.
Yeah, 100% interesting move. There's some ties there between Bart Andrews and this kicker that he has worked with in the past from the spring league. But Luis Aguilar, I just happened to be conversing with him about coming on for an interview. And then next thing I know, Mike Mitchell sends me a tweet and he's like, "Why are the Stars signing a kicker?" I was like, I have no idea. Let me ask Luis, who I happen to be talking to right now. So he wasn't aware of it at the time. He didn't allude to anything that he thought that he would be missing the game. So I personally think this is probably in a situation where you were talking about, Michael, maybe they're trying to relieve some of the load from him because 20 kicks in a game is a lot for any kicker. But it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm not really sure what to make of this. I think that you bring in a guy who's kicked, punted, and handled kickoffs, you're going to open up some questions for your special teams unit that just watched Luis have this amazing performance. So it's really interesting in my personal opinion. one of the things that I've seen the Stars do that I have no idea what's coming from it. So it's pretty
It does
interesting.
seem relatively logical, though. I mean, his leg is probably tired. Like, didn't he get a penalty on one of the kickoffs after one of the field goals? Was that him or was that a different kicker?
I'd have to look back, but that sounds correct.
It's very possible, yeah. I mean,
so maybe it's because of that. It's like, hey, we don't want you to kick your leg out. Like, we know, just focus on the field goals because we know we can trust in you on that front. And
it's very possible. It's very possible. I mean, maybe they brought the other guy in to kind of alleviate Aguilar through practice and, to not overdo him. But I mean, I don't really know what kickers do in practices at the professional level. I know what they did for us at the college level, which wasn't much. So I go out there and kick 100 field goals and then not really 100, but go out there and kick a significant amount of field goals and then fill our water bottles or something. Pretty much.
There you go. Maybe the water boy got hurt.
maybe.
No, I'm just kidding. I honestly think this has a lot to do with how many kicks that he put up this week. I think that's the only thing that really makes sense to me. But that doesn't mean that that's the case. I mean, literally, I'm not joking when I say that they released the special teams player of the week last season. Matt Mangle was our punter, kicker, kickoff specialist all at one. I think he had a game where he was 4 of 5, and I believe 2 of 2 or 3 of 3 on extra points. Don't quote me on that. That was midway through last season. But then he was released the following day. Him and Michael Carasosa both were released the following day. And that's when Luis Aguilar was signed. And Luis went several weeks without missing a field goal or an extra point. Although he's never been the punter that Matt Mangle was. That's not really his game. He's more of a kicker. But personally, if they're bringing him in as a punter, I'm all for it. Give Luis allow him to focus on field goals because he is really good at what he does. So I mean that to me is a smart decision, but I guess we'll see how things go. Was there any other news that I've missed that you guys would like to discuss from the USFL?
Haven't seen anything.
That was my thoughts as well. I just wasn't making sure. All right, let's get the USFL predictions for Week 6 out of the way. I was going to recap the predictions, but we kind of already did that earlier. So this week, we've got some interesting games coming up. The first game of the week is the Pittsburgh Maulers at the Memphis Showboats. So let's go to Michael first. What are your thoughts on this game?
You said it was the Maulers and Showboats? I'm sorry. I was distracted for a second. I was reading something.
Yes, sir.
You said? Okay. So Memphis's edge rushers apparently appear to be, pretty stout. Pittsburgh's offensive line seems to be pretty solid. Troy Williams is able to move a little bit better than MBT does. Pittsburgh's on the upswing. I mean, they literally are in prime position right now to possibly take this North over. And that's something I never thought I would have said heading into the season. I'm going to take Pittsburgh here. I know the South seems to be stronger, but I think Pittsburgh's in the upswing, and they're just might be better than Memphis just slightly enough. And I'm going to say this score will be 27-17 Memphis. I mean Pittsburgh. Sorry.
I say you're sending mixed messages here, man. Mark,
just call me Krish.
Okay, let's go to Mark next. Mark, what's your prediction of this game?
I'm actually really excited about this game. I think both of these teams are kind of in the upswing. So I got Pittsburgh. I'm going to go 24-20 Pittsburgh. I think they lead the game for the most part. Memphis gets within striking distance, but not close enough. So I think Pittsburgh offense kind of outweighs Memphis's offense.
Awesome. Pierce, what are your thoughts?
They're both coming off wins, but I still don't believe in Todd Haley at all. Like, I don't think the Showboats are good. I still don't. And I just do think the Maulers are obviously way much up there going on to it. So I'm going to go with Pittsburgh, and I'll go 27-21.
Okay, well, it's going to be a sweep for Pittsburgh. I'm going to pick them as well. I have them winning 32-18. I personally see Troy Williams progressing every single week that he plays. He seems to get better and better and better. I hope it continues because I've been a big fan of how he plays. I mean, I'm always a fan of mobile quarterbacks, but he is doing way better than I expected, especially after the beginning of the season. That was one of the things that Chris said that made a lot of sense. Troy Williams' first performance was ugly. So was James Morgan. They went to Williams, and ever since then, they've stuck by him, and it has progressively paid them off more and more each game. Moving on to the next game, we have the Birmingham Stallions at the Michigan Panthers. Let's go to Michael first.
So Birmingham really is missing Bo Scarborough, and I honestly didn't think that was going to be as big of a drop off because I do like Zagwandre White. We talked about him last week, Mark, or I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago. But for some reason, I don't know if Birmingham just doesn't trust him as much because they don't seem to be giving him the same kind of run plays and running styles. Try to free him up a little bit. I do hope that they kind of rely on that a little bit more here against Michigan. Michigan Panthers defense looked really solid at the beginning of the year. It's kind of tapered off. If Michigan goes to Carson Strong, I think they have a better chance in this game. But I think Birmingham bounces back this week, and I think they're going to do it so by the score of 24-14. Because
All right.
I don't think they're going to commit to Strong just yet.
Fair enough. So Birmingham 24-14, you said?
Yeah, Birmingham 24-14.
Okay. Just want to double check I heard that right. All right, let's go to Mark next. What is your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Birmingham, just because I think the Michigan defense is really kind of this is an issue though. I think Michigan matches up defensively decently well against Birmingham. So I have an issue with this game, but I think Birmingham ends up winning 21-17. I don't think it's an easy game for them. So I certainly don't think they cover, and that would also put them under. So I could see Michigan finding a way with Corbin. I could see Corbin having a nice game. But this is a very conflicting game for me. I think that Michigan pass rush specifically could cause some problems for Birmingham.
100%. Breland Speaks has been incredibly difficult to stop all season long. Christian, what is your thoughts on this game?
This is such a hard one because, like you guys were saying, this is if Michigan plays their best, I can definitely see them beating Birmingham. I feel like Birmingham's right at the moment of vulnerability where they exactly how to hit them, you will beat them. That's what I see from them. It's they're still good, they can still win, but if you know exactly how to play the game, you can beat them. That being said, I'm kind of gonna go with Michael there and say that they just don't get strong just yet, and I do think it's gonna be a tight one. But I'm gonna go with my guys at Birmingham, 24-21. I'm gonna go with a game-winning field goal.
All right. Betting on Brandon Aubrey is not a bad idea because he is one hell of a kicker. So I'm very torn between this game. I personally didn't like what I saw from Birmingham the last 2 weeks. I think that Michigan is finally going to decide to go with Carson Strong for the full game, and we're going to see a good performance by him. I think they're going to pull out a victory, but it's going to be a tough game. I think 21-18 by Michigan.
I will say Birmingham's injuries have absolutely been killing them the last 2 weeks. I think they're probably the most injured team right now in the USFL. So it's been rough. And Breland Speaks he's a game changer. So it is very possible Michigan win this game. I know I put my score at 24-14, but that score is much closer if I fully believe they were going to Carson Strong. I don't believe it just yet.
That's fair.
You could run the ball against them without Scooby, so
Exactly. And that's the thing that really is the difference maker for me. Reggie Corbin, Stevie Scott. They realistically have the type of back that you want to pound either type of defense. If the defense is more of a quicker defense that's going to be able to keep up with a guy with Corbin, you put in Scott and you pound the rock all day long. If it's a defense like the Stars, they're a little bit more susceptible to a guy with a little bit more quickness. You throw in Corbin, you let Corbin eat all day long, and you see what happens. Quick comment that I wanted to pull up from our guy Tim. We have our Western Conference final. Dallas at Vegas, game 1 on Thursday. So, interesting. Was not expecting that personally, but I don't know anything about anything other than football. So my opinion does not matter on that fact. So moving on to the next game, we got the New Orleans Breakers at my Philadelphia Stars. This is going to be an incredibly hard game for me to watch, I have a feeling. Let's go to the resident Breakers fan, Mark.
I do think New Orleans gets back on track this game. So the Stars have the worst rushing defense in the league right now. You got Wes Hills. I didn't have a huge issue with the Breakers offense. So I'll go ahead and I'll take the Breakers, and I'm going to go 28-17.
Awesome. Okay, let's go to our other Breakers fan, the more OG Breakers fan. Michael, what is your thought on this game?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say the Stars are going to get run over, because I did that last week and look how it happened. But I do think New Orleans gets back on track this week. Philadelphia does, even though with the victory over New Jersey, if it wasn't for Darius Victor's, the turnovers, I don't think Philadelphia wins that game. And New Orleans probably played their worst game. Probably they're going to play all season last week against Memphis. They don't normally turn the ball over. I think MBT up until last week only had 2 interceptions heading into the game. So Philadelphia would need to have turnovers, kind of like Arlington would have needed turnovers against DC to win that championship game. And I don't know if they're going to be able to create enough. And Channing Stribling better be careful, because I think the New Orleans Breakers have one of the more complete wide receiving groups in the league. And I don't mean that biasly. I just think they are complete across the board. D. Anderson and Lee Morris, I think they're both underrated and can create matchup nightmares. And I think it's just going to be too much for Philadelphia to overcome in this game. I'm not going to predict as big of a differential in score like I did with New Jersey, but I think this game could be similar to what Mark's score was, and I'm going to say 28-20. I know that's not divided. I know that you can't divide that by 3, but maybe they get a touchdown in there somewhere.
We can hope. Maybe it'll be on a kickoff return. Christian, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sam, but I don't really see the Stars looking too great in this game. The Breakers are, like I said, they've been basically the most consistent team. And the Stars, like Michael said, they probably shouldn't have won that game. And they haven't really been looking good. And I do think they at least score some touchdowns this time. I actually a little salty on Mark, because literally just as I thought of the score, he told it, but I'm going to go with New Orleans 28-17.
All right, that's fair enough. Well, give you guys a little bit peek into my Stars preview for this week. I have the Stars losing as well. I am going with New Orleans 27-21. Honestly, I'm probably giving the Stars more credit than they deserve on offense, although you can technically kick 7 field goals and get 21. So just throwing that out there. But I haven't seen enough from the Stars to think that they're going to improve dramatically enough to be, in my opinion, the best team in the league. I don't care what happened last week. Memphis caught them on a bad day, I guess, because that's really the only explanation behind them losing. The Breakers average over 350 yards per game on offense. Average. I don't care what league you're playing in. That is impressive. And the Stars just simply don't have the defense. We can't get to the quarterback right now. This past game was our 3rd game without a sack. And if you don't sack MBT, he will tear you up. And that's unfortunately exactly what I expect to see this upcoming weekend. And honestly, I wouldn't shock me if they scored over 30. It's sad to say for me personally, given the fact that I am a Stars fan, but I'm here to speak the truth and not necessarily be biased about my team all the time. So definitely going to be a rough week for me to watch, I have a feeling. Moving on to the last game of the weekend, we got the New Jersey Generals and the Houston Gamblers, which actually could end up being one of the best games of this weekend. Let's go to Pierce first. What is your opinion on this game?
So, like you said, this is probably the one that catches my eye because the Generals have been, I would say, maybe the second most consistent, where they actually win or lose, but they kind of stay consistent where they're at. While the Gamblers, obviously, they just beat the Stallions pretty solid. And, I really expect this to be pretty much a solid game. But I am going to give the Generals just the edge with, the coaching with Lincoln Riley, because obviously he was Coach of the Year for a reason. And I think he's just going to beat him out with a better strategy and game plan. But I do expect this game to kind of be a little step back. So I'm going to go with New Jersey 21-17.
That's fair. Mike Riley, not Lincoln Riley. But I know you know that. That was just a slip. Michael, what is your thoughts on this game?
This game is extremely interesting to me because it comes back down to DeAndre Johnson and his injury. Because I'm pretty sure that he got hurt in the game last week, and that's why Kyle Lauletta came in at the end of the game there. If DeAndre Johnson's healthy, I don't like Chris's idea of a two-quarterback system there in New Jersey. We saw it this year. It was not really working very well, and that could be Prukop versus Lauletta's, experience versus inexperience, whatever you want to call it. But if it's DeAndre Johnson, the Generals may win this game. If it's Lauletta, I think Houston comes back, but it also goes back to Kenji Bahar. Have we heard word about how bad Bahar's injury was? Have we heard anything at all about that? So Terry Wilson played well last week, but now it comes down to the Generals are going to probably game plan for Terry Wilson at quarterback a little bit more significantly. Will he have the same kind of game? That's going to be a question. So this game is the most intriguing to me. Tentatively, I'm going to go Gamblers 21-17, but I am not confident in that at all, and I would not put any money on this game at all.
You say 21-17?
21, yeah, 21-17, yeah.
No, you're cool. I was just making sure I had the score right. Mark, what are your thoughts on this game?
So I think that the Generals, they play a bend but not break defense. So they let a lot up in front of them, but they don't like giving up the deep ball. So I think that will be the case with Wilson. They'll probably run a spy. And I do think the Gamblers secondary is very, very susceptible. So I could see New Jersey changing up the game plan, putting the ball through the air a little bit more. I do think Michael has a great point. Like what is going on with DeAndre Johnson and his health, and Bahar. So yeah. It's very hard to predict when you don't know what's happening with both quarterbacks. But I will go with the Generals, and I am going to run with the Generals 24-13.
Wow, right. 13 for Houston. Interesting. I thought you would have put a closer score on that. I would say Generals 24-17 if I knew DeAndre Johnson was playing and Bahar wasn't. I mean, it's just without the quarterback situation being figured out here on Monday, it's very hard to really put a true prediction in.
That's
like what
fair.
The question is like, how can they defend the run? Can they stop Mark Thompson? Because that's really going to be what,
right,
in my opinion, the difference.
And to me, Generals still have the best defense in the league. So it's if any team's going to stop Mark Thompson or slow him down, it's going to be the Generals. It's just a matter of whether or not that they can.
Interesting. Yeah. Good thoughts on all fronts. Man, this is I personally, like I said, I think this might be the game of the weekend. This is going to be a really good game. These are two of the better run games in the league. You look at Mark Thompson, and I understand that Darius Victor just had 3 fumbles, but you got Trey Williams there. He's solid as well. So if Victor is, in the doghouse this week, I have fully confident in Trey Williams to carry the load. And man, I really honestly think this could be a higher scoring game than people expect. It wouldn't shock me to see both teams score over 20 points. I think I'm leaning Houston. I really like what they've done over the past couple weeks, regardless of who's in at quarterback. I like how they were mixing in Terry Wilson. I'm going to go with Houston. Say 27-24. It's going to be a good game. And honestly, I said that score could be over 20, but that's probably a little high, to be quite honest. But it'll be interesting to see how this game shakes out.
Pop quiz for you, Sam.
Yeah.
2019 Trey Williams. Which team did he play for in the AAF?
The Iron?
Nope.
No.
Pierce. Do you got it?
Ooh.
Mark, you look like you're racking your brain over there too.
Orlando. What's Memphis?
I have no idea.
You have no clue. I'll give you a hint. They had the ugliest uniforms I've probably ever seen
Was
in my
it the Hot
life.
Shots? Was it
No,
the Hot Shots?
no, I like the Hot Shots uniforms. It wasn't the Hot Shots.
I do too.
Oh,
But I
okay.
know people don't like that coach game.
I cheated, but yeah.
Oh, you cheated?
Yeah.
Was it the Nashville team? Was there a Nashville team?
It wasn't Memphis.
No.
Oh,
it
Memphis,
wasn't-
Memphis.
Yeah,
It
no, it
wasn't on
wasn't.
Memphis. That was the team I followed, so I would have known.
Go ahead, Michael.
San Antonio Commanders.
The Commanders. I knew it.
Oh my God, those
I
uniforms
know.
were hideous. Go look them up if you haven't seen them. They were awful. Oh, they were so bad.
That's pretty funny.
Moreau, I think.
Oh God, it was terrible.
The team was solid.
Oh, the team was solid, yeah, but I don't know those uniforms. What's even worse is they came across the screen, even worse.
Here you go. There you go.
Oh, look at those! Look at those! Oh God, they're so
Those
bad.
are so bland.
Oh my God, they're
What?
so bad.
You don't like that red on red action there?
The red
Oh
looks
my
nice.
God.
I don't
Oh,
like the
they're so bad.
shoulders.
No, that's
Oh.
fair. That's fair.
I like the express better though. Those were better.
Oh, so bad.
It's
but the
it's
thing is-
always hit or miss, man.
The thing about it is, though, is the picture actually doesn't make them look nearly as bad as they did when they came across on the screen. Like,
That's
the
fair.
actual live game was, like, so much worse. So bad.
Yeah.
In case you guys haven't noticed, I'm pretty much a resident uniform guy. Like, that's how I usually pick my teams, and when I don't have one close to me. And it's weird
Stallions
because
was on there for me, so I definitely get it. Like I literally looked at Stallions and I'm like, I actually like this color. Kind of reminds me of Florida State a little bit.
Really?
that sand, that light brown sand color, I am so glad they went with that instead of gold.
Yeah. I
So
was
happy
like,
they went with that instead
yeah,
of
it was
gold.
Such a good call there.
But the Breakers have the best uniforms in the league. Sorry.
That's for sure.
In both
They're up
leagues.
there. I
In
like
both
Van
leagues.
and Fedora.
In both leagues?
In both leagues.
Wow. Okay, that's bold.
Who's
You know,
better?
I like a lot of the XFL uniforms better than I like the USFL uniforms, actually.
I think Arlington's pretty clean too.
I
Yeah,
really
I
liked
liked
Arlington.
Arlington's too.
I liked Arlington's logo. Like, I know everybody else
I
is
didn't
hating
know-
on it.
Thank
I
you.
The
love it.
R or the
Thank you.
cowboy?
The R. Well,
R.
really both of them, but I like the R.
They need to get rid of that
it's
little
solid.
cowboy thing. Any outlaws, bandits, renegades, they all have that same kind of.
That's true.
They need to get rid of that thing. Like, just put it back on the clip art and just leave it sit there. Just let it sit there for
Do we
a
still
while.
have clip art?
I have no clue, but that's what it looks like. That's what it reminds me of.
No, that's completely fair.
I love the Arlington's new logo. I did. I really enjoyed it a lot.
I
did.
will say that the Guardians uniforms definitely grew on me as it continued because I wasn't a huge fan of them, but then like as I see them come out, I see photos, I'm like, okay, they're actually kind of slick. Like they actually look pretty nice when you get a good camera. For
to
sure.
me, like I'm very picky with uniforms and team names and stuff, and it's either like you go too far in the unique category and you're corny, or you go just far enough and you're like, oh, that's really cool, but it's not overwhelming. And to me, like the XFL on their little unique touches, like the snake skin for the Vipers, the camo for the DC Defenders, stuff like that, I thought was just really cool. Those little extra touches that just kind of put them a little bit above the USFL jerseys and combos. Because, like, to me, I'm a Stars fan. I freaking think the Stars jerseys are terrible. Like, I honestly often want to refer to them as ketchup and mustard because that's what it looks like to
They're
me.
working at McDonald's.
I will
Exactly.
I will say there are two uniforms that I really, really dislike at a very high level in the USFL, and that is Memphis and Pittsburgh. I
They're
can't
kind
stand
of bland.
I can't stand either one of them. You know what they remind me of, Sam? And this is hopefully not going to offend anybody. It reminds me of like the lowest level indoor football league like style that you can think
fair.
of. Like that's what it reminds me of.
See,
They don't come across the screen good at all, and I hate the Showboats logo. Hate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Like why is it doing a burnout? It's not a friggin' motorcycle.
They should have just brought back the Memphis.
like I like the little M with the
Oh,
crown
man.
at least, but even that's so super generic. I was just like, come on, USFL, do better, please. I like their color.
I like
schemes.
the name.
Yeah, the name is
Yeah.
cool, and the color scheme is fantastic. They just completely
Love the color scheme.
The absolute uniform just looks so bland.
they just whiffed on that, and I just think the Maulers. I understand why they went with the black and gold because it's just what Pittsburgh does. It just like you're just the Steelers, like like it's just
Yeah, basically.
Steelers minor league.
yeah. It's just
Let's hire Ray Horton, former Steelers coach, keep his son, former Steelers ball boy. Let's just bring in a bunch of former Steelers players.
yeah.
Have practically the same uniform.
Yeah, no, I completely. If you were gonna go black and yellow, why did you not do it in year one?
You just need to
Because I think the original
out.
team was purple, wasn't it? Like the
No,
original.
you're right. It was, but at the same time, like, it just, to me, it was like hindsight. People were like so appalled at the USFL Maulers jerseys last year that they're like, oh,
That was
we
what
better
was
change
supposed
that.
to
Well, I
I
mean,
know.
let's be honest. They were not very.
Kirby wasn't.
They were not very good last year. The uniforms were not.
I don't know about you guys, and maybe I'm being a little bold here, but it seems like the USFL in general has been a little indecisive. Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
release of the depth charts last week.
Randomly,
I
out of the
didn't realize
blue,
that was such a big deal.
halfway
That
through
was-
the year.
So
Like,
bizarre.
Why did we hold him back?
Are we
And-
getting them again? Like,
and what's even
Yeah.
and what's even stranger about it is and Sam, you liked the depth charts. I didn't understand why you're listing offenses on opposite ends.
I find that so.
So
That's-
it was
okay.
Memphis. It was
So
Memphis versus
annoying.
New Orleans, and I'm looking underneath Memphis and I see MBT's name, and I'm like, that's not correct. And then right across it says Breakers offense, and I'm like, what? And sure
Yeah.
enough, each game was like that, and I'm like,
I see what they were trying to do because it's like offense versus defense type deal. But at the same time, if you were going to do that, it needed to be aligned a little bit different. What I liked about them is the fact that you had like the first cards that I was sent, right? They had the full roster. First, you had a full roster, number, everything, which I thought was awesome. Very well done. And then you got the depth chart. And then they had like the sidebars that were, very descript, the team colors, all that stuff. But you're right. That one part of it where it had offense, defense, that part did not make sense. In fact, I literally had to take a double take, just like you said, like,
I just,
wait, that's not right. What's going on here? And then I look back at it. I'm like, oh, okay. I see what they're doing here. But it was really odd. But to be fair, I mean, Mark, you hit the nail on the head, in my personal opinion. They are 100% indecisive. And the reason I was given, and I'll give you guys the same exact word for word reason I was given, is that they don't want to produce incorrect information. But the comeback that I gave them, and it's perfectly plausible, and I haven't gotten a good answer since, is if you don't have the information, who does? These are your coaches, your teams that you employ. If you don't have that information, nobody does. And that's the thing, is if you have to write it into their contract and say, you have to give us your starting lineup by Friday at midnight every single week, so be it. It's part of being a professional football league. If you want to be a professional football league, you have to act like a professional football league. And I know that's a really bold and brazen thing to say about a league that I love and have said that several times. But at the same time, man, do better. Like, literally, do better. Be a professional football league. That's what we want from you guys. You have done great when you've made the attempt, but make the attempt and make it the first time the right way. It's all we're asking. And I know it's not always going to be 100%, but this seemed like something that was just a no-brainer from day one.
I think we discussed it too earlier, one of the earlier shows, about how the disconnect from the USFL and the on-field product. Because usually, like, when you have the USFL, like the office side of it, be as indecisive or as out of touch. I hate using out of touch, but I mean, they're kind of old school, right? Like, it's like, I don't know if they're just leaning into the old school mentality so much that they forgot that, oh, we got to run a league in 2023. Usually it trickles over to the on-field play, and that's not happened. The on-field play is fantastic. The product is not a bad product. It's just that, like, a lack of a transaction wire. Like, the teams individually puts things out, but there's no, like, actual, like, transaction wire on the USFL site. And then on top of that, like, the lack of the depth charts, they, like, partially are leaning into the gambling side of it, but they're not like, well, we don't want to necessarily do all that. You know, it's just like the XFL had so much, like, they leaned full-fledged into the social media side of things. I mean, it was like, really, that was their campaign. And I know that you don't want two carbon copy leagues, but it's almost like the USFL is just kind of like, I don't know if this is going to work, because I like this style. And it's like the old school, you know, pen and paper, let's put it out in the newspaper type stuff, you know?
Can we... Oh, yeah. I mean, can we also buy out USFL.com? Like, how many times do I type in that website and I go to, like, I don't know what it is, man. Like a different language or something. Like,
I'm so glad somebody said
travel
that.
website. Like,
That's
I don't
funny.
know what is happening over there, but it can't be worth more than like $100. Like,
and I hate it, because, like I said, I don't want to talk shit about it too much, because, like, I do love the USFL and I think that they are putting up a good product and stuff, but there's just a disconnect somewhere. Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from, and it may be just the old school mentality side of things, but it's like, man, come on, guys, it's 2023. Like,
no, 100%, and
it's not 1984 anymore.
It's kind of a trip.
That website.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, no, seriously, if you go to it, it's like, I don't know if this is a travel website. I don't know if this is like a
I'm doing
like an excursion. I don't know.
I already have
a news website. Like, what
don't
is it?
even worry about it. Here you go.
USFL.com. It is a
Travel.
Yeah, sell
like,
some
we're selling
shoes.
Sneakers.
Yeah.
Like, we got like these toy cars on the screen. You scroll down and it's like
this kind of looks events. Like a Wish version of Wish.
What am I?
Front
it's
line?
Like, what is going
This is
on?
This is new to me. What?
Type in USFL.com, man. This is what's come up. If you don't type in the USFL.com, you don't get the correct website.
We're selling some houses over here. Like, I just
$2,000, man. I'm gonna go buy that house right now.
I feel like we're not supposed to see this.
Yeah. Like, is this supposed to be censored? I don't know.
Something weird's going on, but it's crazy that they have that they don't have that domain name. But I guess you're operating on a budget. Maybe it was outside the budget. I've never seen that company before. I've never done any research on it. Maybe they're multi-million dollars over there. Who knows? Somebody can fill us in if they know. But real quick before we get out of here, I wanted to make sure that I shouted out the fact that we have a giveaway going on. It's probably unlikely at this point unless you guys do some massive work and share it to everybody. But if we hit 1,000 subscribers by the USFL Championship game, we will give one of our more active viewers USFL team gear from their favorite team. So if you subscribe to Shady Sports Network YouTube channel, so this isn't for Pierce. Sorry, buddy, I'm not going to give people, stuff like that. I just want to be clear that you're not going to get a giveaway if you subscribe to Snowman or to Pierce unless they have said that themselves. But for Shady Sports Network, subscribe to us. Come on over, check out what we got going on, and then stick with us, and we will get you some gear, hopefully by the USFL Championship game. But real quick, before we get out of here, any final thoughts for anything we didn't cover?
Mark, real quick, who's your favorite NFL team? Are you a Bucs fan?
Man, it's sad to end it on this note. I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. A miserable Minnesota Vikings fan.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Take that over Tampa Bay.
Sorry I asked that question.
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, Kirk Cousins, it's like...
Oh, trust me, I know all about Kirk Cousins.
There's just a ceiling. Like, it's just...
I know about him, too.
You're not going anywhere with him. He's good enough where you're competitive, but you're never going to win a Super Bowl with him, so...
40-3.
Yeah.
And I did want to say one more thing real quick is some of the free agents that Sam and I have come across that don't have teams out there is just continued proof that the player pool is deep enough for both spring leagues, because there is a lot of talented guys still out there that are looking for jobs, and the fact that they either have to look foreign, whether it be Canada, the ELF, or LFA, is insane to me, even with the two spring leagues. But it just goes to show that there is some talented people out there, and the spring leagues do work for that factor. So it's mind-boggling how people don't think that that's true. So that's
100%. If you're a team watching this and you need a running back or a wide receiver, hit me up. Paul Terry needs a home. He's a former Stars player, 60 touches, averaged like 5+ yards per carry. Athletic guy, can kick return, play wide receiver, running back. But yeah, anyway, that's my spiel for the day on that player. I'll come up with another player for next week. But anyway, any final thoughts from Pierce, Mark? You guys good?
I'll drop it. Utah Tech represent Colby Williams, our defensive back, and Darius Nash. Nash, he went out to Saints rookie camp. I haven't heard if he got signed, though, but it's still cool that we got somebody in the NFL at least participating in that. And then Colby Williams, he got signed to the BC Lions. There's actually some photos of him up there. So just shout out to the Utah Tech Trailblazers for getting up there.
Wasn't it the old Dixie State?
Yeah, it used to be Dixie State.
Oh, look at that. Knowledge.
Yeah. They got a nice stadium, don't they?
It's pretty good. They just renovated like some, what do you call it, like box seats up there. But it's a pretty good stadium, being to multiple games.
Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. You always love to hear the small school guys get an opportunity. That's why the XFL and the USFL are great. More of these guys are getting looks that maybe wouldn't have been. But on that note, thank you, everybody who joined us. Didn't expect to go 2 hours on this little subjects, but there's always a lot to talk about with the XFL and USFL. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. Once again, thank you, Mark, for joining us and being our fantasy expert. Thank you, Christian, for joining us. Check out DFS Marlin on Twitter and Pure Sports Productions on YouTube as well if you are not already subscribed to his channel. And on that note, we will see you in the next episode.
This is Brett, and you're watching Shady Sports Network. Tune in, hit that like button.
You might wonder, what do these guys do? Player signing announcements. I never in a million years thought you would actually come on to break this news. So without further ado, go ahead and tell everybody what happened today.
Yeah, man. I just had a workout with the Cincinnati Bengals. Signing me right out.
Without further ado, I'd like to announce that, I'll be taking my talents to Salina Liberty.
This just in, the Major League of Football is reportedly collapsing, unable to pay hotel room bills, with players being kicked out of their rooms and hotel managers asking them to leave voluntarily without issue.
And then we got Lions wide receiver Williams is debuting this week as a starter. That's something to look at as far as the eye test goes. And then another one on the eye test is Mostert might be coming back to Miami. And we can see if he has a role in this offense and see if he can be viable for the next couple weeks coming and help us in the playoffs and possibly towards a championship. That would be very nice because he's sitting on my bench right now.